Welcome back. So the next error that we are covering is error of commission. Now this error is made when the entry or the transaction is recorded in the correct class of account. Now what do I mean by class of account? In accounting we have 5 classes of accounts, namely assets, liabilities, capital, incomes and expenses. Right, so any transaction that the business want to record, it should belong to any of these classes of accounts. For instance, if you are paying rent by check, so this will affect your expenses. Rent is an expense and it will affect your assets as well, that is bank. So in error of commission, the transaction is recorded in the same or in the correct class of account, and it is also recorded on the correct side of account. That is, if you wanted to debit an account, you have debited an account, right, and with the correct amount as well. So the side of account, the amount of the transaction and the class of account, they all are correct. But what is wrong? The account is wrong, right? You have made the entry with the correct amount on the correct side of account in the same class of account but in the wrong account. So that is called your error of commission. Now let's understand this through an example. For instance, sales on credit to David amounting to $500 are recorded in Dave's account, right? So this is an error of commission. How? Now, how were we supposed to record this transaction? I should have credited my sales account to show an increase in income or a decrease in inventory. So sales should have been credited by 500 and David should have been debited by 500 as well to show an establishment of a debtor. However, what have I done? I have correctly credited my sales account. Why? Because the transaction, the error doesn't say anything about sales. So this means that the second part of the double entry is correctly recorded. However, instead of debiting David, I have debited Dave's account by 500, right? So now the error is only in one part of the double entry, that is on the debit side. Now assuming that Dave is also a debtor of the business, I have made the error in the same class of account because they both belong to my assets class of account, and I have correctly debited an account, right? So the side of account is also correct and the amount is also correct, but just the problem is I have made the entry in wrong account. Now the question is that how should I correct an error of commission, right? So the correcting entry is very simple. You just have to make an entry in the original account just like it should have been made. So David should have been debited in the first place, right? David will now be debited for the correcting entry, and Dave had nothing to do with this transaction, so he was incorrectly debited. Now to eliminate the effect from his account, I will be crediting Dave by 500, right? Previously he was debited, now he will be credited, and then there will be no effect because of this error in his account, and I'll be establishing a debit entry in David's account as well. Now what do you think, how will this correcting entry will affect the profit of the business? If you are thinking that there will be no effect on profit, then you are correct, right? Why? Because the correcting entry involves only the debtors, and we know that all the debtors are the assets of the business. They are recorded in the statement of financial position and not in the income statement, right? So any account that doesn't affect the income statement will have no effect on the profit as well, right? If the problem was in sales account, then it would have affected the profit as well because sales are shown in the income statement. But since the correcting entry only involves the debtors, so there will be no direct effect on the profit, right? Let's move to our next example, which says rent paid 500 recorded in wages account. Okay, so now what is the problem? Rent we know is an expense and wages is another expense of the business, right? So now again the problem is in the same class of account. Both belong to the same class, that is expenses, and we know that all the expenses are debited. So instead of debiting rent, I have debited wages account. So the side of the account is also correct and the amount of the transaction is also correct. I should have debited 500 in my rent account, but I have debited 500 in my wages account, right? So what have I done? Let's make the wrong entry as well. I have debited wages by 500, and let's assume this was paid through cash, so cash has been credited by 500 as well. However, instead of debiting wages, I should have debited my rent account, right? Now, how will I make the correcting entry? First of all, I will record the transaction, just it should have been recorded in rent account. So, rent should have been debited by 500. The other part of the transaction is correct. The second part, that is cash, has been correctly credited, but I have incorrectly debited my wages account. So, now I will be eliminating this effect from this account. So, wages will now be credited by 500. So, this is how we will correct the error of commission. Now, again, what will be the effect on profit after you have made your correcting entry? Will there be any effect on the profit? No. Again, there will be no effect on the profit. Now, why is that so? Since both of these accounts belong to my expenses class of account, and we know that expenses are recorded in the income statement. Right now, why there will be no effect? This is because when you made the wrong entry, you recognized an expense, right? Although you recognized a wrong expense, but you recognized an expense, right? So instead of recording this as a rent expense, you recorded this as wages expense. So an expense amounting to $500 did become part of your income statement, and then you calculated your profit, right? So 500 expense has been recorded in the income statement, although in the wrong account, but in the same class of account, right? And now by making this correcting entry, you are just de-recognizing an expense, that is your wages, and again recognizing an expense with the same amount. So eliminating an expense and then again recording an expense, that expense which had already been recorded in the income statement, right? You are just now correcting it by bringing it under the correct account, that is your rent account. But this 500 had already been become part of your income statement as an expense, right? So that is why, of course, it will affect the individual accounts, that is you are eliminating 500 from wages and then recognizing them in rent. So it will affect the individual accounts, but there will be no effect on the profit after the correction of this error. Now let's move to our next error, and that is error of principle. Now what is error of principle and when is this made? This is made when the transaction is recorded with the correct amount. So the amount is correct and the side of account is also correct. That is, if you had to debit an account, you have debited an account, but you have not debited the correct account, and that is because the entry is recorded in the wrong class of account. The side is right, the amount is also correct, but the account is wrong. And why the account is wrong? Because the class of account is also wrong in error of principle. In error of commission, the class of account is same, right? The class of account is correct, but the problem was only in the account. Now in error of principle, of course the account is wrong. And why is that? Because the class of account is also wrong, right? Now how is this possible and how is such errors are made? Let's understand this through an example. For instance, purchases on credit $200 recorded in drawings account. Purchases, we know that purchases increases your inventory, right? And that is why they are also an expense of the business. They are recorded in the cost of sales. So how this transaction should have been originally recorded? I should have debited my purchases account by 200 and I should have credited any supplier's account, because this is on credit, so supplier should have been credited by 200. Instead, what have I done? I have debited my drawings account. Now drawings, we know that drawings is not an expense for the business. Drawings are when the owner withdraws something from the business for private use, so that is called drawings. And drawings, we know that drawings is also called a contra capital account because it reduces your capital. So purchases belong to your expense class of account. However, drawings decreases your capital, it belongs to your contra capital account. So they both do not belong to the same class of account, That is why this will be called your error of principle. The second part of the double entry is again correct. There is no problem while recording, while crediting your suppliers, but just on the debit side. Now, how will we correct this error? In the same way we corrected the error of commission. First of all, debit the account that should have been debited. So, purchases will be debited by 200 and eliminate the effect of the wrong entry from wrong account by crediting your drawings account. So, drawings will be credited. Now, again, how will the correcting entry affect your profit? Will there again be no effect on the profit? Now, this time there will be effect on the profit, and why is that so? Because of purchases. Purchases, we know that purchases increase your cost of sales, right? Purchases are added in the cost of sales to show that how much inventory we purchased during the year. That will increase your cost, and anything that will increase your cost will decrease your profit. So, by recording this correcting entry, by debiting purchases, you are increasing purchases, you are increasing cost, and you are reducing your profit by $200. Let's move to another example. Purchases of fixtures and fittings. Purchases of fixtures and fittings. Fixtures and fittings are your non-current assets. $800 recorded in repairs to fixtures and fittings account. Repairs belong to your expenses class of account, right? Purchase of fixtures and fittings should have been dealt completely differently as compared to when repairs are recorded. Repairs are shown in their own account and non-current assets are shown differently, right, in their own account. However, what have I done? I have, instead of debiting my non-current assets, that is my fixtures and fittings account, I have debited my repairs account. Now again, since both of the accounts are debited, the side of the account is correct, the amount is also same, but the error is made in wrong class of account or in different class of account. The transaction is recorded in completely different class of account. So, how will I correct this error? First of all, I should have debited my fixtures and fittings account. So, fixtures and fittings account will be debited by 800, and I should not have debited my repairs to fixtures and fittings account. So, since I have debited that account, I will now credit my repairs account to eliminate the effect of the wrong entry. So, this is how you will make your correcting entry. Now, again, how will this affect your profit? First of all, fixtures and fittings, they were not recorded previously. So, they are being recorded. It will of course increase your non-current assets, but it will not have any effect on the profit because they are recorded in the statement of financial position. However, by crediting your repairs account, right, previously when repairs were debited because of 800, it should have increased your expenses by 800, which means that your profit would have fallen by 800 as well. So, this was because of the error. But now, since I have corrected this error, I have reduced my repairs expense, right? So, that expense has been reduced, and because of that my profit will increase because I am crediting my repairs account. Whenever any expense account is credited, it is reduced, it is decreased, so that will increase your profit, right? So, a quick revision: in error of commission, the class of account is same. However, in error of principle, the class of account is completely different, right? But in both of these errors, the side of the account is correct, the amount is also correct. The problem is only in the accounts. The accounts are wrong, but in error of principle, the class of account is also wrong, right? So, that's it for this video. I'll see you in the next one.